Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. I'm here with the host of Congressional Dish, Jen Briney. And Jen, I wanted to have you on the show now. I mean, there was a whole week after the election. We're waiting to see, who actually won. And I think might even still be a runoff now in Georgia. But something really interesting happened in this election that I really want to get your take on, which is there was going to be this red wave. It did not happen. A lot of the Trump-backed candidates did not win, but a lot of regular Republicans did. So it seemed interesting to me. I was talking to JB Updike, who's been on the show before, who runs open primaries, and he's, it's a very nonpartisan organization. And he made a great point. He goes, Graham, and independents they're saying independents are the reason why there wasn't a red wave, because what the independents did is they said, we're not voting for the conspiracy theory, QAnon, January 6th, whatever Republicans, but the regular Republicans that are just sort of like conservatives or whatever, they won. They crushed the Democrats in many areas. DeSantis in the state of Florida is a great example of how he wiped that state up. And there's several questions like, does Trump not have as much control over the Republican Party anymore? It's really setting it up for a big battle now between DeSantis and Trump and whoever else now wants a run at the Republican nomination. But and then an article came out in The Hill that said they polled voters, and 59% of the people polled said, if it ends up being Trump versus Biden again, they're voting third party. They're voting independent, which tells me that the country is kind of fed up with this red blue stuff. And I've just seen it as a comedian just traveling around. I just finished, recording a special, and it's an hour, and I'm making fun of the whole, I make fun of Biden, I make fun of Trump, I make fun of both parties. And I did it in, Madison, Wisconsin, very liberal town. They loved it. The next night I was in Waterford, Michigan, which is a MAGA, area of Michigan. They loved it. Nobody complained. No, neither spectrum, nobody complained. So I guess in seeing all of this information, and you as somebody who follows this very closely, how do you see the results of these midterms? How do you see this playing out over the next 2 years leading up to the presidential election?
So here's the problem with me. I don't really pay that much attention to the campaigns and the horse race. And it's really weird for me to be doing this job and to feel so disconnected from that, because what I'm preparing for the next 2 years is the Republican policies that they put out in very detailed policy proposals. That's what I read. And so I'm kind of preparing myself for the job they intend to do. And it just seems like that is not your question, even though it should be.
No, but it relates.
We should be judging them on that. And yet it does seem to be nonsense. How close are they to Trump? Does Trump endorse them? That's the conversation that we seem to have about these elections. Right. And so I don't really know if what I'm paying attention to is even going to be a factor in the next 2 years. It's very frustrating, because I'm preparing for them to, do some investigations, which I think some of them might be quite useful. They're definitely going to be investigating Hunter Biden, and I think it really sucks for him because he's a drug addict, and this is going to be terrible for him. But when it comes to the 2024 election, we're going to find some things out about the Biden family, especially in Ukraine, that I think could be very, very interesting. And if it's allowed to be on the internet, could affect the 2024 election. So I see the Republicans taking power. I think that could be an effect on the upcoming election. But why people vote the way they do, it's baffling to me, because it's so disconnected from the job they do in governing. It's crazy, because what I actually witnessed in the last 2 years, I've been doing my show now for 10 years, And this was the first 2-year Congress where I got to see what the Democrats do when they have full power. I've seen the Republicans, now I've seen the Democrats. I was actually quite pleased with some of the things the Democrats did.
Hmm.
And so you would think that if we were paying attention to the governing, we would be rewarding good governance. And yet the House Republicans took over, and we have a real crazy crop that are going to be taking over our House of Representatives in the next 2 years. So it's just so disconnected from governing that I don't really know how to answer that question, because I'm just I'm not in that world.
No, but it very much relates because, and I think you actually bring up very excellent points here, because I think this is the problem with American politics is I would call it a deliberate disconnect. I think there's a narrative that the corporate media puts out. The Republicans are this, the Democrats are that, and the American public, I have empathy for them up to a point of like, well, we've all been propagandized, but then they seem to just not see the insanity of, and this is probably what is pushing their voting, rather than paying attention to the details of the laws and bills that have been passed, which is they just go, well, some of the people that just voted the Democrats out, and I'm not a fan of either party at all. I don't vote for either one of them, but they'll just do that. Like, well, gas is $6 a gallon, so that's Joe Biden and his gang. Get them out of there, without looking at like, well, have they passed bills that have made your lives better? And I feel like, I mean, I'm a big old lefty, so I feel like the Democrats have done not enough. If the Democrats would have just said, hey, here's, we're in the middle. When Joe Biden took over, he would have said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody gets Medicare for all. And we're going to just wipe out student debt, because 85% of student debt is federally backed, so that I can just do that with the swipe of a pen. And, instead of this bailout money going to Wall Street, no one's going to be behind on rent. Like in most other countries, no one's back on rent. They just paid their rent. So had they done those like big ticket item gestures, which would have impacted people's lives on a daily basis, people would have said, oh, there's no way I'm voting against the Democrats, because look what they did. Biden came into power and they made everything better. But because they don't do the big things, and you can get into a second and explain to us some of the smaller things, or the things you've been paying attention to that you think the Democrats have done that are better, we're sort of left with this. When Trump was in office, oh, we got to get him out of there, he's horrible. Biden's in office, oh, we got to get him out of there, he's horrible. Like, it's just sort of what this football keeps getting kicked back and forth between these two awfully corrupt parties that really don't serve the American people. They basically serve their donors. So, and then again, the Democrats have a lame duck Congress right now. You would think they'd be jamming through every possible bill that they could possibly get done, and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd think they would cancel their vacations and like take advantage of the limited time they have, and like they're not. Yeah, you're right. It's very frustrating to watch how they use the power that we give them. That's for sure. But I think that there's a hangover effect. Like there's a lag in between actually making legislation and having it go into effect. And so what I've noticed is like, you're going to see Republicans in the next 2 years for this upcoming election. They're going to see projects in their districts that are going to be breaking ground because of the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot that was done without a single Republican vote that was done in the Inflation Reduction Act. So when you see electric car chargers being put in all over the country, like stuff like that, that was the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans had nothing to do with it, but they're going to see this shovel ready projects go into their district in the next 2 years, and they're going to take credit for it. And because the local media, largely because the well-funded corporate media owns local media, like because they don't look at the details of these laws, when that happens in real time, they don't get called out on it. So what happens is the Republicans, they take over Congress, and then they say, look at all this stuff that's happening right now. You can see it in your districts, and the people that actually did it don't get the credit. So that's also what's being set up to happen in the next 2 years. You also see like, they call it like Bidenflation. It's like, we just had a global pandemic, which by the way was managed by the Trump administration for 2 years. Like, let's not say that this is all the Democrats' fault. But policy takes a minute to kick in. So I think we are being failed. And I don't really blame the American people for voting the way they do, because the journalists are not taking the time to be like, okay, this is the thing we're happy about. How did that come into law? And they're not saying exactly like who did it, when it happened. And so, yeah, when I look at 2024 and like actual governing, I actually think the Republicans are going to take credit for things that they didn't do. And
Oh,
that
wow.
is going to be kind of annoying to watch, because you're
Wow.
going to see projects breaking ground. It's going to happen.
That's a great, that is a great, that's a great point, because I'm seeing, I've been waiting as an electric vehicle owner. I've been like, where are all the new charging stations that were supposed to come out of Build Back Better that I was told in January? I've seen one,
They
like I
weren't in
haven't,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, it was in the Inflation Reduction Act. They only got it done a couple months ago.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know. And again, nobody's telling me that in the mainstream media. You're telling me
so
that.
it feels like a failure, right? Like the Democrats said they're going to do this thing, and they got it done at the end of their Congress, but we're not going to feel that until later. And if no one tells us this, then we don't know that that actually became a thing, and therefore people don't vote based on what was actually done. And you let people like Kevin McCarthy take over the House of Representatives in your ignorance. So, yeah, it's.
Well, why don't you think the Democrats are just trying to pass every law possible now so that they can say, hey, remember in 2 years for the president, look what we did? Or do you think they're aware of the fact that the Republicans will take credit for it, so they don't want people to go, this stuff will happen that was passed by the Democrats, but the Republicans will be in power and take credit for it? I mean, even though it's like, I guess we're technically split, right? Like the Republicans have the House now, but the Democrats have the Senate. So,
Well, so if you look at the calendar, it's actually kind of unfair to say that the Democrats can just do whatever they want, because when it comes in the Senate time is a absurdly slow situation. And the Republicans, because we only have a 50-50 Senate right now, like they do have the ability to slow stuff down. So right now they're working on the bill that's going to essentially say, like, if you got gay married in any state, it's valid in every state. And there are 12 Republicans that are voting with the Democrats. Like, this is a done deal in reality, but the people that don't want, I'm not sure if the opposition to that is to the bill itself or if they're just trying to gobble up the entire Senate calendar. But either way, the Republicans have enough power in Congress to really slow things down. So it's not the situation where they can just go and pass a bunch of stuff because the Senate calendar operates in the ridiculous way that it does. And so what the Democrats are doing is they're doing the stuff that is really important, like the Supreme Court. They're just, they didn't do it with abortion. Maybe they've learned their lesson. And so when it comes to gay marriage, they're taking care of that right now. And there's only 4 weeks left in the lame duck. Now, I'm frustrated with the fact that they're leaving on December 16th. Like, I feel like we have so many problems in this country that if the problem is time, like, take the time away from your families and donate it to the country and, like, get stuff done over the holidays, because that's an option. And they're not choosing to do that. And so, of course, it could always be better. But, yeah, they only have 4 weeks. And they would have to do another reconciliation bill, which is a whole long process. It's just the calendar, even though in normal people time, it sounds like a month is a lot, in Senate time, it's nothing. So they're actually kind of limited in what they can do. Also, they didn't finish their basic job yet. They were supposed to fund the entire government. There's 12 sections of government by September 30th. They didn't do that. So they still have all 12 left to do by December 16th. And I was reading this morning and like, they're not close. So they have that to do. They also have to fund our wars, which, as we know, is always a top priority. Right. So they have all of their work that they were supposed to do over the entire year. They've left it all for the next month. So, yeah, it's just a very busy calendar that I don't know if they could put any more on it, even if they wanted to. What they are going to do is they're going to attach stuff to that government funding and to the NDAA. So that's how they're going to get their last minute stuff done, is they're going to dingleberry it into law by basically like gluing it onto stuff that needs to get done. And then it'll all just sail through together. Those bills will be thousands and thousands of pages long.
Wow. Yeah, when I was on your show like a month and a half ago or something, we were talking about they still haven't funded the government.
Yeah. And like they always wait right up until that deadline. So the deadline's December 16th. Because the Democrats have full control, I don't expect a government shutdown situation, but they might kick it closer to Christmas. Like I do think it could get, pushed forward and take a little bit longer. But yeah, they have a ton of work to do and very little time to get it done. And if they don't get that done, then it gets kicked into the next Congress, which means that the Republicans in the House would have the ability to mess with government funding. So that's another reason why I think that no matter what they have to do, they'll get it done because they're going to be freed from having to compromise for at least one last government funding cycle if they can get it done before January. Your
So
congressman
now,
pick.
ha- now that it's like you say, it's a 50-50 Senate and a Republican Congress. How do you see these next 2 years playing out in terms of the type of bills that are going to be trying to be passed?
Well, so I just released an episode today where I read the entire Republican policy proposal. One of the things that I was very happy to see is the last time the Republicans had power, they tried really hard to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And they said they were going to replace it. I read the replace bill. They were not going to do that. They were essentially going to free the insurance companies to take your premiums and give you very little back in return. They seem to have dropped that effort based on what I read in their policy proposals. There's going to be a lot of focus on the border. They're going to say that the fentanyl crisis is being caused by immigrants, which the facts did not back that up, but it's all over their documents. So expect a lot of border nonsense. Where I have some hope is their investigations. They promised they're going to look into the origins of COVID and into, a lot of people won't be happy to see the Hunter Biden stuff, but in Ukraine, the Biden family has been, since the coup in 2014, there was a replacement of the Ukrainian government that happened, and Joe Biden in particular, as vice president, was a key figure in that. And then after that, his son got some business dealings with Ukrainian gas companies with having no experience in that industry whatsoever. So it was just, and I think that's only scratching the beginning of what was going on with the Bidens in the last 2 years of the Obama administration in Ukraine. I'm very excited to get some answers about what went on there.
Yeah, I'd like to see Hunter Biden get investigated. I like the whole Biden family get investigated.
Yeah,
I really think
I feel bad for Hunter just because he didn't choose to be a part of that family. He was definitely like his brother died. Like he's been through so much. His mother, like he's been through so much, and I just feel bad for the kids of the people who choose the power getting sucked into this type of stuff. But then again, he took the job and was, banking off the family name. So I don't know. I would like the investigation to be into Joe Biden. I feel like that is more appropriate than his son. But essentially what I envision happening in the House of Representatives is that we have the most extreme wing of that party is about to get power. Kevin McCarthy has been in leadership for a while, but he was not one of the more moderate people. And he's already proven that he will bend to what the Freedom Caucus wants. And those are like the Tea Party people. So I think we're going to see a pretty extreme House Republican rule. And I think they will use the threat of government shutdowns in order to get things attached to government funding and defense authorizations that wouldn't be able to be passed on their own. That was a strategy that was used in the early Obama years, and it worked. And so I do think we're going to see that again. When it comes to the Senate, the Georgia runoff, which is going to be happening on December 6th, is really going to determine how well the Senate functions. Because if Warnock wins, he's the Democrat. If he wins, then it's going to be 51-49 in the Senate, which gives the Democrats a majority, which means that they get one extra seat on every committee. Now, that's important because when you vote something out of committee, that's how you get bills to move forward. That's how you get judges to move forward. That's how you get investigations to happen. Like, you need to have that vote so that things can actually progress. If, however, that idiot football player is voted into the Senate, then the Republicans will have the ability, because all the committees will be even. It'll be, the same amount of Democrats and Republicans. They'll have the ability to basically just shut governing down in the Senate if they want to. So even though Kamala Harris will have the tie, those committees not really being able to function is just going to grind government to a halt. So I think it
Mm.
actually gets much, much uglier if the Republicans are able to do that. If they're not, then we will get some judges to kind of balance out whatever, Trump and McConnell did all those years. Yeah, so yeah, I think we're in for a bumpy 2 years. I really do. And I think it's going to be very important to be paying attention to what gets attached to must sign legislation. Unfortunately, our media likes to cover the easy bills, the ones that are 5 pages long and do, crazy things and have no
Right.
chance, because those are juicy. But you have to read the really long ones that get passed 5 seconds before Christmas, because that's where all the secrets are going to be. And that is going to be so important in the next Congress, because that's how all the governing is going to get done.
Wow, that's an excellent point. Yeah, and they're going to focus on the next 2 years. There's going to be the Republican primary is just going to be a clown car, and if Joe Biden doesn't run again in 24, then the Democratic will have an insane primary full of a whole slew of, when it's all said and done, it might just be, The Rock versus Lady Gaga or whatever. So that is great theater and great ratings for the corporate media. Having followed the 2019-2020 primaries and election, I saw it firsthand, and it's big. They cover it just like, as a sports fan, I feel like I'm just watching March Madness. Like, they just cover it the exact same way, and they just want to hype up the game to get ratings. It doesn't really matter. And while that's happening, like you say, they'll just be attaching all these horrible things to bills and stuff like that. And the media won't talk about it. They'll talk about whatever, like they want to outlaw grasshoppers or something stupid like that. And, and
it's a lot easier to cover a speech than it is to read a 3,000 page bill. And it's a lot more fun going to all these campaign events and being like, oh, did you hear the crazy thing that they said? And I think the horse race politics, it's rewarded. And so I think that's why we get it. But there's real governing that happens. And I think it's a shame that it gets ignored. And I'm really concerned for the next 2 years, because the last time when Obama was president, we had John Boehner as the Speaker of the House. And I have issues with Boehner and Paul Ryan, but there was a line they wouldn't cross. Kevin McCarthy would cross that line, I think. He's afraid of the crazy wing of his party. This is why Liz Cheney, which I hate defending a Cheney, but he kicked her out of the leadership for participating in the January 6th committee and wouldn't allow anybody else in the Republican Party, lest they, lose their elections, which both people who participated in that committee did. It basically became like a loyalty test. If you participate in this committee, you're kind of persona non grata in the House Republicans. That's the leadership of Kevin McCarthy, where I just think that Boehner and Paul Ryan, they were numbers guys. They would work with the Democrats when they had to. Boehner wrote a whole book about how much he hated the Freedom Caucus people. It was quite funny. I know he recorded it while drinking wine, so if you listen to the audiobook, it's even funnier than it is in writing. He's just randomly in the middle of it just says fuck Ted Cruz just out of nowhere. It's fantastic. But that's who was in charge the last time we had this divided government with a Democratic president set up. Kevin McCarthy, he wasn't one of the guys that voted to keep that government funding or that government shutdown in 2013 going. That's when they were trying to repeal Obamacare or just damage it. Our government was shut down for 3 weeks. And I looked at the vote that reopened it. And a lot of the people that were just crazy, that no one knew their names and you could just dismiss them, not only are they still in Congress, but a bunch of them that voted no, that wanted to keep that government shut down, are now in leadership positions in this party. So it's really the people I saw 10 years ago that I was like, oh, you nuts, they have now been promoted. So, and I don't think that has really been a part of the conversation here, where this is not just a standard group of Republicans that are taking over, even though I get the same vibe you do, that I think people are kind of done with this whole Trump thing. In Congress, there's been a lag in Congress too. I think we're about to see our craziest House of Representatives. And I'm deeply concerned about it, because I do not trust these people that are getting into power. All the people that were more moderate and put country before just wacky things, they've all retired or been kicked out of Congress. Liz Cheney's not going to be on Congress. Adam Kinzinger's not going to be in Congress. I'm really concerned about the Republican behavior that we're going to see starting in January.
You think it's just more extremist, right wing, like just insane conspiracy theory types, or what do you?
Well, there is that. Marjorie Taylor Greene will have the ear of the Speaker of the House. And I think she will probably be on committees. So it's like, yeah, the truly crazy people will be empowered in a way that we haven't seen. But I think it's less that and just more people that are so beholden to corporations that there really isn't a line. And I think that we're going to have a lot of people that are against government, period. So having the government shut down, these are the type of people to be like, good, we shouldn't have a government. Everything should be done by the private sector. Like, I think that we have a
Oof.
group of people that are just very disrespectful of government that should not be in charge of running a thing they don't believe in. And I think they are zealots in that. So if there is a bill or whatever they say they believe in that they want to attach, I do think they will bring us to the brink. Like, I will be genuinely shocked if our government doesn't get shut down in the next 2 years, because that is the strategy they used the last time. It kind of worked a few times. I mean, it backfired, but it didn't because stuff still got snuck through. I think the strategy is going to be used, and based on their previous votes, I think the people that are in power are the people that are not going to do what John Boehner did. They're not going to go to Nancy Pelosi and be like, okay, let's make a deal and get out of this and like ignore the crazy wing. I feel like the crazy wing is going to be catered to more than ever before, based on the fact that the crazy wing are now the people that are going to be in charge of the committees, are now like moving on up in that party. So yeah, I'm mostly concerned about the government shutdowns and what they will get attached to largely ignored large bills that become law. That's what I'm looking out for.
Man, well, we're going to be talking to you more in the next year or two, because it sounds like you're going to be able to uncover for us a lot more of the hidden attachments that are going to be. That's what they always do. I mean, that's just like in the 5 years I've been doing this show, I've seen almost 6 years now that I've seen they love doing stuff while there's a distraction going on. I mean, especially they've always done this. They've always just like, when there's some big crazy thing happening, then there's some little quiet, awful thing that no one's talking about going on, down the road or behind closed doors or whatever. So that's going to be the part that, is going, and the mainstream media won't pay attention to it at all. They just, they're paid not to, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, and the presidential election is the mother of all distractions. And we also have to keep in mind that when they're running for office, all that money that they are collecting for their campaigns is going to the media. They're paying for ads. They're paying for, pieces in magazines, and like they are paying our media. They are the customer. So it's not just that the media is lazy and wants to cover campaigns instead of governing, even though I do think that is a factor. I think the bigger factor is that they are financially incentivized not to piss off politicians, because that cuts off the gravy train. They'll just pay someone else to run their ads. So the whole system is corrupt, and this is how we end up so uninformed that when we vote, I don't know how to explain why we vote the way we do, because it's certainly not based on governing. It's based on largely lies and nonsense.
Yeah, largely lies and nonsense. And it's just, I mean, the last two presidential elections, there was something between both candidates was somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion spent. And like you say, some of that was like staff and, buses and jets or whatever, but a lot of that was ad. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in ad buys on the network side, on the local side. That's a lot of money. And you can't, it's just like you say, we're just beholden to this business model that they can't get out of. And it's like why we got to have the Super Bowl every year, like that's because there's just too much money at stake. It's a big time of the year. We have to have, and so we have to have a big election cycle. Other countries, their presidential election or prime minister election is 30 days. If the campaign is 60 days or something like that, or 90 at the most, it's like you run and then you boom and then you win and you're sworn in the next day. We have a year and a half. I mean, at the beginning of next year, we're going to start. Trump's already announced. But you're going to start having the beginning of next year, in the next 3-4 months, everybody's starting to announce. And then we're going to start having the campaigns by next summer, in the next like late summer, fall, if my memory serves, is when we'll start having televised debates of the primaries. And that'll go on for 4, 5, 6 months. And then we'll start.
The whole time we have to keep in mind that a lot of people that run are currently in Congress. So while they're running, they're not doing their jobs, especially if they're running for president. And then all of them in the like Congresses are only 2 years long. And in the second year of the Congress, they're all running. So it's well known that if they're going to get stuff done, they do it in year 1, and then year 2. They really, they have to fund the government and, authorize wars, which this Congress did not accomplish. But yeah, in the second year of a Congress, they seem to act like their job is to get their job again instead of actually doing the job. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's going to be insane, and I'll be curious to see what happens. And we'll have you back on the show, in the next couple months to see, like you say, I want to find out what stuff they tack on to this last minute thing. Like you say, right before Christmas is when they usually do a lot of add-ons. So,
well, and so that's the thing, right? Like, it's not going to be fun as a country, but for you and I as content creators, they're going to give us so much. So, I mean, have a great show.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be a fun time. I mean, I would do these live streams after the debates that would like get huge numbers. And I'm releasing this special in the next couple of months. And I said, the next 2 years, then I'm going to release another special in the summer of 2024, because I'm going to have a good, 14 to 18 months of making fun of these jackasses and all their insane shit that it's going to be. Yeah, I'm going to have 2 specials as a result of this. So yeah, it is insane. It is a bummer, but it's like, I don't know what else to do other than make fun of it, because I don't know what else to do.
That's the only thing we can do. We have to laugh about it. That's why I'm constantly putting jokes in my own show, because it's like, if we don't laugh about this stuff, we're gonna go insane. So yes, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and we have to laugh at it.
It was funny, because that's why I was, sometimes I get too mad doing the show, and I was like, I got to just go make fun of it, because there's nothing, it's not going to change. Or I mean, if it changes, I don't know how, but I'll just keep making fun of it. And it was so funny when you were on Anything Can Happen game show, and Ron's my co-host, and then when Michael Madsen goes, oh, I don't pay attention to any of this, all 3 of us went, oh, he's so, like, we were so envious that he did. You don't have to follow this insanity. Like, that was so funny. We didn't go, wow, come on. We were all like, oh, dude, I'm so jealous. You don't know.
So jealous. And then he beat me.
And then of course you won.
And then you won.
Which kind of summarizes the whole American political system anyway. Like, you could be all this informed and know all this stuff, and then somebody else who doesn't know what they're doing wins. Just
Herschel Walker is in a runoff.
Herschel Walker
to be a senator.
Oh God.
He's running in an erection. Like, come on.
Yeah.
The jokes just write themselves with that guy.
He's unreal. It's amazing to me that this is happening. A guy I watched play in the USFL when I was a kid is now having to cover up for his girlfriend's abortion or prostitute or whatever. I can't keep track of whatever,
There's
tale
more
of
than
woe.
one.
There's more.
That's the thing. There's more than one. There's also possibly CTE issues. Like, the man's like, his brain is off. Like,
for sure.
And we're gonna put him in the Senate. Like, what is this country? It's entertaining though.
It's entertaining.
Gotta give it that.
Oh, well, Jen, thank you for taking time to be honest. Tell everybody where they can watch and listen to your show.
So my show's audio only. It's called Congressional Dish. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, all those places. And then I also have a Patreon, because I don't accept any ads. I don't want to be paid off like these other media people. So if you support the show on Patreon, I put up bonus stuff when I feel like it. And but yeah, the show is everywhere that podcasts are found. It's called Congressional Dish.
Well, everybody, if you haven't listened to this show, listen to it. You'll really see how the sausage is made, and you do a fantastic job of breaking it down, just very matter of factly. This is the Republicans did that, the Democrats did that. This is what was attached. Like, you really break it down very just wholesale. This is what happened. And
Thank you.
you're doing a service. You're doing
Yeah,
a
and I
service.
hopefully it's fun too. I try not to make it boring. I don't find it boring, so hopefully other people don't either. This stuff is so fascinating. So
It is fascinating when just listening to you today on the show, like the way you, like, I didn't realize that if you have a 51-49 majority in the Senate, you get an extra committee seat. I'm like, wow, that's why that's so important. I didn't know that. Like, that's really critical.
yeah, you would think our media would be saying that over and over again, but because the horse race is decided, they've kind of checked out of that election. It's ridiculous. Like people don't
Ridiculous.
understand the huge ramifications. Like, is our government going to function or not for 2 years? Are resting on that one election. It's wild.
Wow. Well, everybody go watch, or excuse me, go listen to Congressional Dish. Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, anytime. Aloha.
Aloha. That was Jen Briney, ladies and gentlemen. Always great having her on the show, hearing what she has to say. It's really, it's like I say, please listen to her show, Congressional Dish, because you'll really understand the details of how laws actually made in this country. So, hey everybody, thanks for watching. We are still in our like 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood, and go to GrahamElwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.